welcome to the Housing.com webinar on how is the COVID-19 pandemic impacting the commercial real estate sector. I'm Jamul Ghosh, Editor-in-Chief, Housing.com News, and joining me today are panelists Abhishek Goenka, who's the CEO of Coworks. Abhishek, welcome.
Thank you, Jamul.
Yeah. Arpit Mehrotra is the MD Office Spaces for Southern India, Couriers International. Arpit, great to have you here.
Thank you.
And Vishal Mirchandani is the CEO for Commercial and Retail Spaces for Vankra Limited. Vishal, great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'm going to get right down to it. The conversation about commercial has been an interesting last couple of years, for the sector. It was the standout sector for Indian real estate. It outperformed residential real estate. If you look at the projections that were shared at the beginning of the year, it looked like commercial was going to be the stellar performer this year as well. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed all of that. So what is the sense that you get? How has the commercial space been impacted by COVID-19, and how do you think the impact will be for the rest of the year? Vishal, I can see you smiling, so let's start with you.
Yeah, I know. As you were discussing earlier, I think this question is quite a common one. I think coming back to this commercial real estate, impact on commercial real estate, I think we are impacted as much as anybody else, any other sector, right? So as long as the COVID-19 issue continues, we are going to be having our own issues in the sector. But that said, I think what we are also observing is there is a degree of positivity between people, between the regular population and the business, the various businesses that we interact with. There is hope that a vaccine is soon on its way. There's a cure on its way, and we believe that that is more of a short term, more in the short term rather than a very long term. Therefore, I think people have started talking a little more meaningfully rather than being in a shutdown mode. So April was pretty much a shutdown mode. I would say most of or part of May was also shut down. But I think from June onwards, we've seen very relevant conversations beginning with clients on expansion strategies, on where they can actually look at new spaces, whether they can visit sites, and what are the kind of options that are available to them, and of course fishing around for opportunities that could be tapped into immediately. So in the short term, of course, we are right now in maintenance mode. I like to call it a maintenance mode, not anything more than that. We are looking at getting out of this maintenance mode in another 3 to 4 months. From Jan 2021, which is the first month of next year, which will be the first month of the financial year for all MNCs, we believe that a more tangible and stronger turnaround will be experienced. Not visible, we'll actually go through that process of signing more documents, more definitive agreements, etc. Which, by the way, some transactions are being discussed very aggressively, very positively. We believe that even, or rather, despite the conditions that we find ourselves into to be in today, we believe that we'll still end up at a pretty healthy absorption number. When I say absorption, I mean the leasing number for the year, and it will be in the region of about anywhere from 35 to 42 million square feet, which is a fantastic number given the uncertainty and the fear that was prevailing our entire lives. And on top of that, what we are seeing is that while people are talking about rent rates going down, etc., we are not experiencing that at all. Okay. Because I think developers have learned how to build projects, how to create high quality projects and create and deliver value. So we've gone beyond that that life cycle stage where just pure price becomes a selling proposition. Yeah. So I think all in all, it looks quite positive. We believe that Jan 21 will be a very, very strong start or revival to the entire sector. That said, 2020 itself, by the end of 2020, calendar year 2020, we would see a moderate sort of a performance from the sector.
Yeah. Abhishek, what about you? Do you agree that these seem to be short-term pains for the commercial sector? What's your take on this?
No, I would agree with everything that Vishal said, and I would just supplement it with a couple of observations from my side. Right? One is that, as you rightly pointed out, the supply side of good quality grade A assets in India is still very, very limited. Right? Hyderabad market, we saw a lot of supply coming in, but if you just look at it on a pan-India basis, even on a pre-COVID basis, the gap between supply and demand was so large that hypothetically, I'm not saying it will happen, but even if you reduce the demand by 10, 15, 20%, it is still way in excess of the foreseeable supply in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So to that extent, I don't see any immediate headwinds. The other thing is that on the pricing point that Vishal made, and it's not that there are several other downsides of the way the currency is moving, but give or take, if you look at it across India, the rent per square foot from an MNC's perspective has still hovered around $1, right? And therefore, that is still leaving India in a very competitive position, and hence, I don't think there is any intense pricing pressure. In fact, if any, I think there is room for the rates to go up, which again, of course, get reflected in the capital values of the asset. And the third is that, I think I love being an optimist like Vishal and would say that the shoots of recovery will come sooner. But whichever way we look at it, some change is permanent as a result of this pandemic. So some design changes, some increase in the per person density and all of that is also something that is kind of permanent with or without a vaccine. And again, not that that should be a happy reason for growth in the sector, but again, invariably, whatever reduction will happen in demand because of work from home and distributed offices and things like that will get offset by the increased demand for space because of the density norms. So net, we've heard this conversation many times. We heard it in the 2008 crisis. Then, when AI and things like that and other technologies became the buzzword, people kept saying that India will lose all its outsourcing jobs. But, we've seen completely the contrary. The extent of outsourcing in India has dramatically gone up. People always say India is a low talent labor market. Yes, there is a lot of base end engineering and BPO work happening, but there's a lot of high end work happening as well, and there's more and more of that. Those kind of teams also being created by large MNCs. So net, and listen, I think while clearly there's no running away from the fact that MNCs have been the biggest off takers for office space, domestic demand is also not insignificant. Now, whether you consider somebody like a Flipkart as domestic or international is a bit debatable, but there is significant domestic demand. And therefore, I would just supplement what Vishal said with these points and say that I don't think the sector is in distress by any stretch of imagination.
Arpit, are you seeing it? Is there any room for optimism, in your assessment of how the sector has been impacted, the overall commercial sector by the pandemic? What's your analysis?
So my thoughts on this is, I think what both the gents have been talking about, I'm absolutely in line what these guys have been talking about. The reason I will tell you about it, and I will add what Abhishek has talked about, when IT came down to India, precisely you would be getting only a coding as a job. Most of the people in India were doing coding. Now, last so many years, the amount of talent and the cost variable we have been in India, we have seen a lot of artificial intelligence work. We have seen a lot of data centers which has come in. Yeah. We have seen a lot many of research and development which has been happening in India. So quality job has always been happening in India from last few years. Now, coming back from a costing perspective, 10, 12 years before, when the MNCs were investing in India, that time the dollar price was 45 rupees. Now today, even if you go back and check on that, now dollar price is again 75 rupees. For them, the cost arbitrage from the last 10, 12 years have not increased. So there are struggles at this point of a time, but at the same time, I'm equally confident that there is a lot of business which is expected, especially when US and Europe goes for a slowdown. We expect a lot of business because we have the right talent, the right cost, and the right product. So we are pretty confident on that, and we see that it is going to revive further. Yes, there is certainly some slowdown which has happened for the short term. In fact, we released our H1 report yesterday, and as per our H1 report yesterday, we have seen around 35% of the absorption coming down, precisely because from the last one quarter. Q1 was pretty good, Q2 went down, but if I have to go back and see supply year on year, I'm talking about pan India. So supply year on year from the last year to now has increased by 2%. So that's a little cheer which has happened, but yeah, now construction labor and everything is a challenge, which we have been talking about it. But overall, things are slowed down. So short term, there is certainly an impact, but people who are looking into long term bet on India, I think they have been very positive. We have seen, especially in the last 1 month, April and May was pretty slow, but June was. We have been receiving a lot of inquiries, and a lot of global in-house centers from US and Europe are trying to get and more information about India.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Like, we have actually received some interesting audience questions. There's one that I'd like to pick up, so, and this touches upon, the work from home concept. So, Pavan Kumar CV asks that with the current situation and work from home concept, will the office space demand come down, or will people start creating office spaces at homes? What is the forecast of office space demand in the next 2 years? And should developers focus on building office space or retail? So this is a really interesting question, so maybe Abhishek, we could start with you on this one. What do you think? Are people going to build offices within their homes? How is work from home impacting? Because when it first started, we thought that it's only going to be there within the lockdown period, and now a lot of even big companies have gone on record to say that this has been a successful experiment for them. There are many companies which have said that at least for another year we will be working from home. So how does this sort of play off, in terms of the overall office absorption? What's your take on it?
So 2 or 3 points here, right? One is, I think the whole work from home debate is a bit polarized and I think a bit sort of dramatized, right? Personally, as an example, I've done a lot of work from home over the years. A large number of the IT services companies have always had a very robust work from home policy. What has changed, no doubt, is the fact that people who never believed work from home is possible, let's say a BFSI company or the administrative teams of a manufacturing company, they were all forced to do it and it has worked. Right?
Yeah.
Now, because it has worked, it doesn't mean it becomes permanent,
Okay.
but equally, it doesn't mean that it is going to disappear when things get back to normal. When I say normal, that's itself a big question, but it doesn't. So I think the answer is somewhere in between, right? Definitely people have tasted the benefits of work from home, and there's no reason to completely believe that everybody will come back to an office. Equally, there's no reason to believe that the office is dead, right? There are several, and I'm no expert, but there are several software issues, mental health issues, the need to collaborate, the need to have human interactions. The list is endless. So to me, the needle or the ball will fall somewhere in the middle. And even if that happens, like I've explained in the earlier comment, the demand is so much greater than the supply that even if we see some reduction in teams coming back to the office, even if people employ rotational work from home to work from office policies, even if people do distributed offices and various return to work strategies that are being talked about, the demand is not going away, right? Yeah, and I think it's very easy to say, should we create offices within homes? Everything in life comes at a cost. I know we're not discussing it, but when you say that you're going to put only 2 people in a table of 4 in a restaurant, it comes at a cost. So somebody has to bear the cost, right?
And we are a very price sensitive market. Residential real estate is extremely price sensitive. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's not as though the suburbanization has really happened. I mean, I think if we can move to a situation where in India people really move away from the cities, from the center of the city to the suburbs, from the tier one cities to other cities, then we're talking about a different dimension and a different debate. But as long as some of those structural issues remain the way they are, and unfortunately, COVID has not changed that paradigm. I don't see anything materially changing for the commercial sector. And yes, people will be more cognizant of what kind of homes they buy. But I think it's a little utopian to say that now should a home have an office, because you're going to pay for it. And while the employer may reimburse you the cost of a chair and a table and a UPS, is the employer going to reimburse you the cost of 100 square feet? I don't think so.
So Arpit, one of the questions, that our audience member had was about, what would the projections be like for the next 2 years? So what do you envision, what will the office space, look like in the next 2 years?
So, not just coming back on your question, Jumar. So, my understanding on this, if you go back and see the scenario, probably 6, 7 years, or probably 10 years back, when IT came to in India, they were giving more spaces to an employee,
Yeah.
which was getting smaller and smaller from last many years. So, I have seen 150 to 180 square feet, which was used to be given to an employee, and came down to 60 to 70 square feet per person. So work from home was always there as an option to an IT employee. Usually they used to do 2 days a week or 2.5 days in a week, right? So I don't think so. That's a new phenomenon. Now coming back and saying that how long this is going to happen, we really need to see. There are certain issues which are happening on it when it comes to work from home, which Abhishek has been talking about it. Now the bigger challenge at this point of a time, when 70 square feet per person, which was given to an employee, now, let's assume that maybe 20, 15 to 20% of the employee come back and organization decide that they work 100% back home. What we foresee is that now the employees within the office will be given more space. I foresee that probably what you are asking 20% of an employee to go back and sit back home, probably you will give that space to the remaining employee in the office. So from your question perspective, I do not foresee a demand coming down. Demand, maybe at this point of a time we can't anticipate much what's going to happen, because this is something very new for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But while we have been discussing with most of the corporate occupiers, we foresee now everyone is looking to make more bigger space for an employee experience, rather than making them much more smaller. So once you give them more space, so the demand does not come down.
Yeah.
I hope I answered.
Yeah. Vishal, there's another part of the question, which again I find very interesting. So this person is asking, should developers now be building retail spaces or offices? Is that how we are supposed to look at it? Is it a apples to apple comparison? How does one answer this question?
No, see, they are two different businesses. So
Yeah.
one can't replace the other. I mean, if you want to shop, you cannot go shop in an office, right? So you need to create a retail destination for that.
Yeah.
So the question now, I think the question is a little different in my view. The question is whether retail real estate will actually survive and thrive, right? So that's the question to
You
answer.
have preempted my next
Yeah.
question. So great.
So office, I think we've answered in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think retail, see, you got to understand one thing. We are, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, we are all in this COVID crisis. So there are no exceptions. Okay. But of course, there are very few sectors which have been hit very, very hard. And one of them is retail, without doubt, right? Apart from tourism and airlines, etc. So we believe that, retail, while it has been hit very hard, we are social animals. Indians are social animals. Now, if there is no vaccine or cure for COVID, there is no sector that is going to do well. Okay, almost no sector. We will all be in trouble because our incomes are all going to crash, right? Because economy will crash. But we are not. We can't speak of that situation. We have to be more optimistic and more hopeful, and assume, like I mentioned earlier, that the vaccine and cure is going to emerge. Let's say 6 months from now. If that be, starting from 6 months from now, it's not going to be overnight, even after 6 months. So over the entire 2021, we will have progress made in that direction. So that said, there is certainly a fantastic opportunity for retail to revive. Right? I don't think that the retail sector will struggle the way it is struggling right now. Right now, it's absolutely in the doldrums because nobody's stepping out. Right? We are not even going to offices. So how would I go to retail? Because that's not a
Vishal,
need.
there's
More
an
of a desire.
assessment, that even after all the lockdowns are lifted, a lot of analysts are saying that people are not going to go running back to malls, that fear will be there for some time. Do you agree with that footfalls, even after all the lockdowns are over, getting footfalls will
So
be a challenge?
look, I think analysts have to do their job. So I'll try to do my job, right? So, we live in a real world. I'm not looking at, gossip or, some sort of hypothetical statements. But the fact remains that nothing in life happens overnight.
Yeah.
Okay?
Correct.
Nothing. You can't build, even if I have to start a new project in real estate, it'll take me 3 years to build it, right? So I think, I'm not saying that it'll take 3 years for the footfall to revive, but certainly we will not be, for example, we will not get so quickly kick-started that we'll be at exactly at pre-COVID levels. That's not going to happen. Okay, there is going to be caution, there is going to be fear that will override decision making on visits to the retail destination. That said, I think once we reach the level of 50, 60%, I think after that to reach 90% will be a very accelerated phase,
Yeah.
because the big part is to get the half of the population out, or half of the visits covered. So once you feel that that is safe, I think that will bring in the hordes, right? We'll go back to the malls, we'll go back to the theaters, etc. But till that, if the population is still 15% or 20% of the footfalls yet, then I think the fear will continue, because there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't know of much of the outcome. So I think we'll have to wait and watch till we hit the 50% number. After we hit the 50% number, I personally believe that the visits will be accelerated. People are just dying to go out, and pun is not intended there, right? So people really want to go out and shop and eat, dine, see movie, etc. So I think that economy, and Indians don't have many other options for leisure, right? So I don't think that's too much of a thought process, uh, and I think it will take about a year plus 1.5 year for us to reach the normalcy situation as far as retail is concerned.
All right. There's another audience question that I'd like to take up. This is about rentals. So Sunil Thakur asks that the decline in lease rentals and overall demand will happen in mall retail space as well as office space, but will it impact large size stores and office spaces much more than the small sized units? Now, this is an interesting question. Do you think, maybe the bigger players will probably be a bit more insulated, or how does one analyze this?
See, I'll
Arpit,
tell
let's
you,
start with
in
yeah.
India,
Yeah.
traditionally, India has had a shortage of quality spaces. Okay, so there has been a learning curve, right? Both in office spaces as well as shopping
Retail.
centers. You're seeing very high quality developments emerging in the last that have emerged in the last 5 years or so, and accelerating and actually getting bigger and more important and more high quality as we move forward. So I think the big guys, the big companies, the Fortune 20, Fortune 50 company tenants, occupiers, would certainly be looking at high quality space.
Okay.
Okay, they have to provide the same experience to the employees working here as they have been providing, let's say in California, right? They have to provide the same amenities or even better because the cost is lower, so on and so forth. The same goes with shopping center, right? Uh, the real shoppers who are the high net individuals, HNIs, the UHNIs, they spend a lot of their retail money overseas because they get that experience, right? They get that experience, and it's like a talking point. I went to London to shop, etc. But increasingly, we are seeing a lot of money getting retained in India, right? That is being shopped, that is being spent in the Indian retail destinations. Now, if the experience is uplifted more, and it is getting uplifted, you will see a lot of the money coming back to India. What that the money that was being spent overseas. So we think that this process is already on its way, and the demand for high quality spaces will only increase. And when the demand for high quality spaces increases, you will not see a rush to reduce rates as much as a rush to demand high quality spaces. So I don't think there will be that much of a push down on rents. But in fact, there will be no push down on rents for good quality spaces. There will be an acceleration after we settle down. That said, there will be a stark difference between the high quality and the suboptimal quality developments. And there, obviously, as it is today, as it was yesterday, the rents are always challenged.
Yeah.
So it's not a new phenomenon. It's
Yeah.
just going to continue in that same direction.
Yeah. Arpit, what kind of pressure on rentals are you, anticipating? What's your assessment?
So my thoughts are a little different. I foresee whenever there are disruptions, there are innovations, right? So my thought is what we have been hearing about is that there will be innovation which will come both in retail as well as in commercial office now. Now in a retail, the formats which we were offering or we were seeing in the market, maybe there might be some changes in those kind of formats. A small or a smaller one can become a bigger one, a bigger one can become a small one, right? So it can be a hub and spoke model, means you have a multiple outlets and not at you need not to have a one big space at one mall. Maybe you need some retail in some smaller mall and some. So it's all distributed. What we have been hearing about it, right? So my estimate is that it will get evolved. The numbers, the pressure, there are certainly pressures on, especially on the retail, because a lot of these retailers have been on a grade A asset and they have been paying very high rentals on an asset. but this lockdown has reduced a lot many of footfall. So there is a pressure. So many of the I said the bigger developers have given a lot of relief, which is a good thing to all these retailers for some point of a time. But what is the end date? No one has an answer to it, because till the time me and you step out from our houses and go down and start visiting, I don't think so it is going to happen. As of now, my understanding is that not more than 15 to 20% of the people are visiting, and that is also a huge number if it is really happening. Uh, but offices will also take some more time to get evolved, because for everyone, whether you talk about retailer or corporate occupier, I think employee safety is the paramount at this point of a time. They do not want to get into a situation that creates more panic in their offices or whether in the retail format itself. So there is certainly a pressure on rentals, but an asset which is a grade A asset and with a low vacancy asset, I don't think so. The numbers will get reduced immediately. But the markets where we see more supply hitting in, the cities where asset is coming in and there is already a lot of supply in the same asset class, we see a price correction might happen. But again, there are short-term and the long-term phenomena, and we really need to watch carefully on this.
So, Abhishek, I'd like to bring in the co-working angle now. So, beginning of the year, obviously, we saw some fantastic projections, for the co-working space. The assessment and the analysis was that a lot of grade A occupiers would also be taking up co-working spaces. Now, how has the co-working segment been impacted by this pandemic? Okay, could you please give us some insights?
Sure. So I think there is, an as-is assessment and there is a future assessment. I think on the as-is, there are two broad categories of operators today in the market. Those that were catering to very early stage startups, which was how co-working was originally envisaged, and players like us and some other players in the market who were very enterprise focused. To the extent players like us were enterprise focused, I can't say we've had no cancellations or no vacancies, but large enterprises have still not given up space, like we've discussed for the last many minutes, and therefore for us, I won't say it's business as usual, but we're clearly above water. Those that were very startup focused, have seen a lot of distress, because for those startups, space was the last thing on their mind. It was a matter of survival, and they gave up the spaces and pretty much went about minding their other series of problems. So that's, I think, where what the as is situation is, and like it happens, and I think it was anyway overdue. I think COVID will be the catalyst for a lot of consolidation in the sector, because this is one of those cases where the barriers to entry were very low, but the barrier to scale and success were higher. Going forward, and I think we need to still see it actually play out on the ground, but again, based on what we've discussed so far, the hypothesis is that there will be a lot more demand for spread out and flexible options. People will want distributed offices for their teams. They will want more flexible lease tenure. They will want flexibility to ramp up and down. So I think the outlook is positive. Are we seeing it actually play out? Not yet. But in every conversation that we are having with potential occupiers, the outlook seems pretty positive.
Yeah. Now we've been talking about, that there is going to be increased focus on, sanitization, on just the health needs of employees. We need to reduce the density, of people in the offices. Now, my question is, how is all of this impacting the bottom line of the business? Is it going to make running offices more, expensive? Is it going to make making of offices more expensive? All these changes, how is it translating vis-a-vis impact on the bottom line? Vishal, what do you think? Your audio.
Yeah, sorry. I think it's a little early to pinpoint exactly what the impact will be on the occupancy cost, but it will be somewhat in this direction is what I feel. Of course, the de-densification process is here
Yeah.
to stay. That de-densification is going to happen, which means more square footage per seat. Like Arpit was mentioning, it has come down to 70 pre-COVID, and I expect it to go to about 100 to 125 square feet as it was around 10 years back. So that is the level of efficiency or inefficiency that we will see going forward. Now, some of the offices which have already been fitted to 70 square feet, will probably just let go of every alternate seat, if that be the case, if that's the call. Now it all depends on how this COVID, how the vaccine cure, etc., all plays out. So until such time, I think that is what is going to happen. And if every alternate employee is not going to be in office and is going to be at home working from home, then the cost doesn't increase. Okay,
Yeah.
cost doesn't dramatically increase because you're still occupying the same square footage. Now the point of distinction comes in new office spaces. I don't think, just to go back, rewind a bit. I don't think the occupiers are going to refurbish their current offices to an extent where they will plan exactly for the de-densified new normal. Okay, that's not going to happen
Right.
because they would like to keep that as the option in
Yeah.
case
Correct.
the COVID fear is completely gone out of play, right? As far as new offices are concerned, I think they would like to plan for the future in case such a sort of event does reoccur. Not just fearing COVID, because I don't think the COVID issue will continue that far. Like I said, the vaccine, etc.
Yeah.
But I think for the new spaces, there will certainly be a plan to de-densify, right? And have some sort of a more innovative plan, more secure plan that hinges on health and safety of employees. Otherwise, it will become an issue on it will become an attrition issue also. Because if some company offers and the other company doesn't offer, then there will be a distinction, area of distinction for an employee to make as to where he or she would like to work in future. So I think those are norms that yet need to get established. I think it's going to be an evolving process. It's not an overnight solution. We are going to see that playing out over the next 1 year, 2, 3, 5 years. It's very, very early to say that, but somewhat in this direction is what I have, what I feel.
What about you, Arpit? What's your take on this?
See, my understanding on the, if I have to talk about holistically from an organization perspective, from an organization, the amount of investment which comes to real estate, when I talk about all the cost, right? In an ideal size, the entire cost of real estate and capex and investment cost should not be more than 5 to 6% in their entire portfolio cost. There are organizations which were doing 7 to 8% as their real estate cost. I think those will be the one who will try to bring back those costs, right? So if my overall real estate cost is 4% or 5% itself, right? I think I'm in the right ratio. Now, even if in that, if the cost increases by, let's assume 20% because of fumigation and more sanitization, and I'm just giving a hypothetical number. So still I'm less than 5%. I think the play is too small and they will do anything when it comes to bringing employee experience. I think they will not cut down the cost at this point of a time because if they have to welcome back employee, they have to get their confidence back.
Yeah.
They will do probably a notch more than what they were doing before, right? So I don't foresee it's a bigger cost in the overall cost for an organization. While there might be a jump, but jump on 4%, 20% is 4.8%, not on 20% to 20%, right? So the cost is much lesser. I don't foresee organizations are willing to take a step forward. They're talking about employee experience, and this is going to get enhanced further.
Yeah. So Abhishek, how are the co-working spaces? How are they sort of adapting to all these changing needs? Please give us some insights.
So I think just going to supplement, most of it has been covered, but I think beyond sanitization, which is now a de minimis box to take, there's a lot of technology that we are adopting. Everything is being made contactless. The access, instead of using badges on our turnstile, we're using phone-based app systems. The whole visitor entry process is automated. We've created proximity detectors. So if two people are too close to each other, the app generates an alert. Our video feed, we've developed technology that analyzes the video feed to detect if people are not wearing masks or there is a crowding in a particular area. We've introduced a feature which allows people to book seats in advance so that people don't show up at our centers and are then hanging around looking for the right place to sit. So I think there are a lot of technology that needs to be adopted because while sanitization and hygiene is de minimis and cannot be compromised, by itself that will not be the solution. And unless we rapidly deploy and adopt a lot of the technology and the related solutions, that's what will make the real difference.
All right. Now, tell me, in all of this, how is the landlord-tenant relationship evolving? I know the force majeure clause, it has been evoked, but it's one thing to sort of, bring in a clause into effect. But at the ground level, what's happening? What is the relationship between tenants and landlords like? Arpit, maybe you could take the lead on this question.
So landlord-tenant relationship depends how long the relationship is, right? If it is a short-term relationship and if someone is coming back and asking about some relief, uh, I think it depends on individual to individual landlord. And anyhow, we have both Abhishek and Vishal there on this panel itself. They can talk in detail. But landlord and always, and this is my experience from last so many years, I've seen that both landlord and the tenant relationship has been very fantastic, especially a grade A developers and a good at tenant, right? So they usually have come back and spoke about some challenges. These days, in fact, things have got changed. The landlords have become much more transparent than what used to be 20 years back. They have been more friendly towards the occupier, right? So they have been very supportive. They are more flexible, and especially after when we have seen that the co-working getting more and more evolved, which talks about more and more flexibility, right? That is what the entire experience model has been, more flexibility, right? So we have seen a grade A developer and a landlord having a fantastic relationship. But how old is the relationship also makes sense, and who is from either side, who is managing the relationship. I think it's pretty positive. And till the time, if the ask is not obnoxious, I think people will consider the ask.
Yeah. So Vishal, you are smiling. So what has been your observation? What's happening right now in the
No,
sector?
I was smiling at the last statement that Arpit made. So I don't think anybody's made any obnoxious calls. I think everybody. So the fundamental thing I'll tell you about between the tenants and the landlords, for lack of a better term, we all believe that we are in the same boat.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's the important starting point. So, if, the reality of the situation is like this. There are bank loans, there are LRDs, etc. However you want to look at it, that the developer has to service. Now that is not going away anywhere. There is a moratorium, etc. That is only for a short term, and that also without interest. So your interest burdens will continue, and you got to continue with paying your loans. And you're not sort of wishing away your problems. You're only postponing them by a couple of months or so. So I think the a good tenant all the good tenants have realized that. So there is not much of room available for a developer to actually give away, uh, and it's not being seen in an obnoxious manner by the tenant. So because they, like I said, the starting point is that they feel that we are all in the same boat. That said, I think there's a very minority set of tenants who have serious and genuine issues. So where those issues have been recognized as genuine issues, I think developers have reacted in a manner of exception rather than making it as a rule, right? So if there is for example, a startup, just to give you an example, and the startup is taking the space from you and they're struggling a lot, and you know that if you do not sort of give them a small concession for 2 or 3 months, then there'll be a problem. So I think that is 1 or 2% of your entire portfolio. The larger tenants have all sort of adhered to the contract signed. Okay, in fact, as a company, we are at 97% rent achievements, rent collections. So I think more or less it is quite a settled situation, and both have heard each other out and they understand each other's problems. So I won't say that it is a requirement that you have to make a concession for you to score a point with your business associate. It is an opportunity for you to explain and also to hear the issues that each of you are facing and how you are all reacting, how prepared you are to face these issues, and how we can work together, sort of to take this forward. And in future, when you're actually signing new leases, you have to look back and see what's the experience you went through, right, in the past. So each of the landlord and the tenants would try to fortify their contracts to ensure that they're protected in some way here and there. Whether it's accepted by both parties or not, that's a separate matter.
Yeah.
But I think that's the there's a learning, there is a settled the settlement of minds and situation, and there's a progressive action, right, in plan. So I think That's what is actually taking place, and it's actually getting stronger by the day because it is quite the norm now in the industry. I don't think there are any glaring exceptions to what I've said. Like nobody's gone out of the way to ask for exceptional favors, nor have exceptional favors been given to anybody,
Yeah.
right? Because we are, like I said, we are all in the same boat. So I think that has been pretty much the norm.
Yeah. So, Abhishek, has that been your observation as well, that both the landlords and tenants are now being cooperative and they feel that they're in the same boat? What has been your observation?
So two or three comments. One is, Vishal, we are in one of your buildings, so I think you should. We feel good that you got 97% and we contributed to that. That's on a lighter note, but I would modify a little bit of what Vishal said. I think we're in the same storm but in different boats,
Yeah.
right? That's one. The other is that I think April, maybe part of May was all about force majeure, and every other webinar, every other person was an expert in force majeure overnight. But I think some sanity prevailed. Everybody understood what the dimensions of that clause are, what works, what doesn't work, and that narrative has thankfully been put to bed because that was neither legal nor a practical solution.
Yeah.
That said, I actually have a slightly contrarian view to Vishal, not conceptually, but actually the rubber will hit the road in the coming weeks and months, because one, landlords technically, or land property owners, some of them have availed the moratoriums that RBI had given, so they had some leeway. uh, the occupiers were still figuring out what the real impact to their business was. They had some cash reserves. People were still trying to understand, is this a 1 month problem, 2 month problem, lockdown, opening up, this, that, and the other. I think it is now a realization on three fronts. One, that this is still some months away from being solved. B, that the economic impact on certain businesses has been quite bad. And C, that the moratoriums are going to go away. I don't know if they will get extended, but based on what we know now. So I do think there will be a little more emphasis and discussions. I agree with Vishal that there is no friction, and friction is not going to get any party anywhere. But to my mind, I think the narrative will move from a force majeure discussion to a more economic discussion, depending on what the status of each party is, and honestly, depending on who has a little more muscle power and who's going to blink first.
So now we have to move to a last question. Now I know we've discussed this earlier, and it's probably you guys are being asked this in every webinar, but I simply have to ask this again, and you will probably have to repeat yourselves. And so, if you could sort of give us a sense of how long could the recovery timelines? By when can we see some shoots of recovery, in the sector? And more importantly, which segment in commercial real estate do you think will sort of lead this recovery? So, Vishal, I will start with you first. What do you?
Actually, I answered this question in part earlier.
Yeah,
Like I mentioned, right now we are all in maintenance mode.
yeah,
Okay, in inverted commas, maintenance mode. I think this will continue for the next 3-4 months at least. That said, I think we are seeing good progressive discussions that have already started with a lot of occupiers, which will lead to more actionable activities starting Jan 2021, right? At least, if not before that. In some cases, even before that. So, like I said, we see, I mean, quite an average moderate result this year, and an accelerated start from Jan 2021, which is the start of the financial year for the MNC. So I think that is the broader picture I can see emerging. But at the same time, I don't know whether 2021 will be the same as 2019. Highly unlikely. But 2019 was an aberration also.
yeah.
So 2019 was a very high absorption year. Uh, Certainly, I feel there are good chances that we'll hit the 2018 number in 2021. Of course, with the caveat of the cure and vaccine, etc., etc. Now, I think in the entire, if you look at the entire country, how has the country responded during this time of crisis? I think overall, in the scheme of things, we would say that we are in pockets pretty bad off, but I think largely we've done okay. And Bangalore in particular, I think we managed ourselves pretty well until we opened the borders and saw the rise in cases in the last 2-3 weeks. Until then, I think we managed ourselves very well. We were very disciplined in our behavior. The city was actually shut down. We didn't have miscreants actually trying to create issues with the law enforcement, and companies were operating work from home was happening. So there was, varied levels of efficiency being delivered despite working from home. Largely speaking, it was above average efficiency delivered by Bangalore, at least, if not not all of India, across the globe. When you look at the same company measuring efficiency of work delivery taking place across the globe, I think Bangalore has stood out quite competently in those parameters.
Yeah.
That has created a very strong, sort of sustained impression for expansion. So I think, like you said, which are the pockets? So I
Yeah.
think Bangalore will be the first obvious pocket for expansion and absorption, where I think we have proven ourselves. The city has proven itself in more ways than one, not just handling the COVID crisis, but work from home crisis, business continuity, and the manner in which we responded. And I think, followed by a couple of other cities, Hyderabad and Pune, and then we have to see how Bombay actually reacts now post the COVID crisis. But I think these are the things, and of course, importance of technology. I have five factors that I believe are going to propel demand for commercial real estate. And one of the important factors, or the first factor, is the dependence on technology is only going to increase, right? So when the technology dependence on technology increases, where else do you go? You go to India. So that creates more demand for office space in India, more demand for engineers, etc. But every time a crisis like this takes place, you see, when we had a crisis in 2001, with the dot com 2000, 2001 was a dot com bust, and then 2008, 2009 was the economic downturn. I think technology again stood up that time, and e-commerce sort of emerged as a big winner. So obviously now also technology will be a big winner. Needless to say, that's a common factor. But this time another sector is going to emerge as a big employer. Okay, and that is healthcare and medtech.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be a lot of technology, a lot of research that will take place in these sectors, which is going to create a lot of demand. Again, we have a strong platform here in India available to support that those kind of initiatives. And I believe that, that is again going to propel office space demand. I mean, you have many other sectors,
Yeah.
many other pockets, but I think I focus on the big ones, right?
Yeah.
The geography part, India first, Bangalore as a city which will shine up, really shine. And then you're looking at technology and medtech and healthcare, and then supported technology, of course, leads to e-commerce, then warehousing, etc., etc. So I
Yeah.
think that's the, you can say, the byproduct of the technology revolution, or the further evolution of technology rather. So I think those are the areas where we can expect higher and faster growth compared to others. That's my take.
Yeah. Abhishek, what's your take? Which city and which segment in commercial real estate do you think will lead the recovery whenever it happens?
I want to sort of not give a sensational statement on that, Jamur. I think it will come back to the same sort of traditional growth engines. Bangalore, Hyderabad will lead the recovery. NCR, Bombay continue to also have strong supply and demand, and of course Chennai. So I think it will pretty much follow what we've seen 2018-19. I know I agree with Vishal that 19 was a bit of an outlier, particularly in Hyderabad, but I think all cities will show strength. And I personally don't believe that, if one city has fewer cases and another city has more cases, things are going to be different for prolonged periods of time. I mean, this has to be a pan-India solution, a pan-world solution. It can't be that, it's working in one place and not working in the other. So to me, the recovery will be, has to be sort of joint. And in terms of broad timelines, I would agree with Vishal that towards the fourth quarter of this year and first quarter of next year is when we will see normalcy return.
Arpit, so the last words are yours. What do you think the recovery for commercial real estate will look like?
I think occupiers will continue to be bullish on the long-term real estate portfolio growth in India, and we don't foresee any major impact on the long-term commitments. Like I said, the cost of the dollar remain the same, which is very big factor when it comes to saving, right? Within the same price, last 10 years, what you have invested, you can invest on the same price again. And the cost of people, the cost of the real estate is much lower than what you have in European and American market. Uh, In fact, surprisingly, while we have been talking about work from home, you will be surprised to know that a lot of virtual hiring has happened during this time, right? A lot of many companies which are into edu tech companies
Yeah.
have been hiring big time, right? So the amount of hirings on virtual hirings which we have seen is always much higher than we have been talking about it. Maybe that has not come in the form of office space because everyone is staying back home and everyone wants to be safe at this point of a time. But long term thoughts are bullish. So it is short term, there is a bearish thoughts, but long term, we have a bullish thoughts on it. The sectors which will recover much faster, I think it will be research and development.
Yeah.
R&Ds will improve further. There will be a lot of work which will come in. Global in-house centers, which is globally companies will again try to set more big shops here in India. Those were the one who will look for opportunities in India. Then data centers, because everything is moving towards cloud. We have seen a lot of data centers which have been coming now in India. So those followed by the warehousing, because logistics will keep on improving and technology will be a key part, like everyone said, technology and moving towards an artificial intelligence. I think people will keep on investing money here, and we foresee that these will be the sectors which will come back very strongly.
Yeah, well, that's all that we have time for today. Panelists, thank you for a fantastic discussion. Audience, thank you for tuning in. We will see you soon. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.